And here we are, as I drop my notes. Welcome back.
Yay!
We are so happy that you are joining us today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about a really very fascinating story. So, first of all, Vera, was there anything that we wanted to tell our friends?
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
Hi, Valerie. She's finally made a live chat.
Oh, great.
Nicole.
Hello, everyone.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. Okay.
Chanel. Little Chanel.
We'll see if Nana shows up today. You were telling me that it's super hot now.
Yeah, supposedly in Europe. Yeah.
And the first thing I was thinking of, well, maybe Nana's going to have to drink iced tea instead of
tea.
Sip regular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we wanted to talk today about a case that we were watching and how it made us feel, our spiritual take on it. And, of course, I'm always wondering, Vera, did you get a past life on this situation? Because it was really intense.
Yes.
So, first of all, we wanted to start off with our deepest
condolences to the mother and the family of Garrett.
Of this child.
Because a little boy, a 12-year-old boy, was murdered.
Right.
And they lived somewhere upstate New York, and it was a small community, 16,000 people at the time. So they were trying to find out who would do this.
Right. And there was a lot of very strange circumstances around this story. So we kind of wanted to set it up for you a little bit about what happened on that day. Now, Garrett had come home from school, and then it was around like between 4:35, it was right around in there, a little bit after 5 o'clock, when his neighbor, Marissa, and her boyfriend, Sean, they heard what sounded like a tussle and a thud, and someone say either ow or help. And it was alarming enough to where they went to the door of their neighbor and knocked on the door, and she said that when she did that, she heard a lock click. So it made her feel really uncomfortable, and she called the police.
Yes.
Right. And then at the same time, let's see what happened. Downstairs, there was a young couple.
Well, first the police kept knocking on the door.
Yeah, they did.
And they could hear someone walking around inside.
Yes, and they were waiting. They didn't knock the door down
because they didn't know.
They didn't know what happened yet, and
because there was no screaming or crying or anything that was happening.
So they contacted the landlord, and he said that he was on his way and he was going to be there soon. He had to drop off like his niece and his wife or something, and so they were waiting. And that's when, like Vera just said, that is when they could hear someone walking around inside. Well, outside the apartment, down below, there was a young couple changing their tire. I don't think that they heard anything, or maybe they did hear.
No, they did
hear
because
something.
Shannon kept saying she kept looking up because she kept hearing something ripping.
That's right, she was saying that. So her and her boyfriend Andrew were changing the tire, and she was hearing this, but they didn't see anything, and they left. They were done changing the tire and they left. Well, finally, the landlord shows up, opens the door, and they find an unresponsive Garrett, and they take him to the hospital where he actually he passed away. And they also noticed when they were in the apartment that the blinds were bent going out, so there wasn't any sign of like forced entry.
No.
But they noticed that whoever it was that was in the apartment at the time escaped through the window, and they jumped down on this like little like ledge
because they were on the second floor.
Right. Yeah. And in between that and the ground was like this ledge where you could hop down and then got down. But still, it was high enough where they thought that maybe the person who did it could have been injured.
Yeah. The police did.
Right. So let's see if I missed anything on that story.
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
That was right there.
All right. So of course, this is just the worst possible scenario for this poor mother that she was living there with her
could
two sons.
Feel for her.
I know
the grandparents, because Garrett's father had died when Garrett was 2, so he didn't have a father figure, but he had his grandparents, his paternal grandparents. That
right.
He could,
Right. And so, and what happened then? Okay, so Tandy's mom was notified, and she went down to the police department. I think it was like the next day, and she was during the interview. She was there with her ex-boyfriend,
John Jones,
and he was a police officer, and so
an active police officer in that town.
Right, and so one of the things that they were saying, because we saw this, it was on an HBO documentary called "Who Killed Garrett Phillips," and as we were watching this, some of the commentary was that it was very unusual.
There it is, right there. Yep.
Very unusual for this gentleman that was her ex-boyfriend, even though he was a police officer, to be there.
It was like, you don't do that
right
in interrogation. Yeah.
But he was right there with her, holding her hand the whole time.
And one of the cops was his good friend that was doing the interrogation.
Right, right. So it was just a very unusual situation that was happening. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the person that they were speculating it was. And there was another gentleman that Tandy had dated, and they lived together
for a year,
for a while. And
thank you.
Yes, there is Garrett and Tandy. So this gentleman, his name was Nick.
Is Nick?
Yeah, is.
He's still alive.
Yeah. It's still, yeah. His name is Nick, and he was a professional. He was a star athlete.
He at a university.
Yeah, and he became a coach there. He had a promising career. He was a former
coach.
Yeah, he was a former military veteran. He was a member of the community there. So he was like just really this really liked person.
Yes.
And by everyone. Well, I'm sure not by everyone, but he was very liked in the community, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. And then him and Tandy had dated, and they moved in. He had three kids, and she had 2 kids when they lived together. Well, eventually.
Yeah.
But at the time when they lived together.
Correct.
Right. So they had this relationship, and what was happening is that
the son Garrett and his brother were getting teased,
right,
and they were being talked about because Nick is black,
right,
and they were hearing all these horrible things about their mother.
Yes.
So they didn't want her to be with Nick anymore.
Right.
So they broke up.
Right. And maybe we'll take a look.
Let's take a look at who's involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at John Jones. This is Tandy's former boyfriend.
Correct.
He's the police officer. And
there he is.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing is that when she started dating Nick, she was still semi-involved with John, I guess, right?
No, they had broken up.
They were already broken up.
And in fact, she didn't want him around.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things, too, is that she had filed
a complaint.
About her ex, John Jones, that she was afraid for her
and her children. Life.
Right. So that was an interesting point to note. Yes.
And then we could show Nick.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the triangle. Right. And that's where this kind of goes in a different direction because of this whole situation, because of that triangle.
Right. There he is, Nick. This is Nick. Now, so they were living together, and they they decided that they were going to live in separate places because, like Vera said, what was happening, all the because of this conservative town that they lived in. And then as they lived in separate homes, they just reevaluated and decided maybe this is best if we don't get back together.
Right. And they just stayed friends.
Right. And so then this happens, and then they're speculating, they were looking at Nick as the
police,
the prime suspect, that it was he that did it.
Because he's an ex.
Right. Right. So he was contacted by the police, and they were saying, come on down to the, he didn't know. He just went down to the police station to help out.
Yep.
He was just there to, he's like, I don't know what I can offer, but I will do my best. And let's see here. Hi, neat. So he goes down there, and to make a long story short, they were convinced it was him, but they didn't have any evidence. I mean, they didn't have any real significant evidence that it was him.
Well, they were trying their best to find it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they had they called him down there, I think it was like 9 a.m. They had a press conference scheduled for 10, and they were going to say, we got the guy.
Yeah.
So he's down there, and it was, oh my gosh, you guys, if you see the interview, I mean, it's making me sweat just thinking about it.
Whenever I was watching it, I was upstairs and I was like walking around my bedroom. It was like, it's so nerve-wracking.
I know.
And then I would come downstairs, and I had to look and see on the internet if what happened.
Right.
Before I could finish watching
I know.
it.
It was, oh my gosh, it was awful because
it
was
horrible.
like, he started to, you could tell.
It started out good, the interview.
It did, of course.
And then the cop pushes himself back and goes, okay, let's get real.
Yeah, he goes, okay, let's stop fooling around now. And then he goes, he was trying to get him to admit to something, and he's like, why are you asking me these questions?
He goes, I came here to help.
Yeah. And then they kept saying, well, you can leave. And then finally, when he realized they were looking at him like he was the suspect, he tried to leave, and the officer stood in front of the door and wouldn't let him leave. And then he wanted to call his friend, who just happens to be
a
lawyer who's married to another lawyer,
Manny.
And we could take a look at Manny. So he just happens to, he has his phone, he calls his friend, and
his friend really is a good friend.
But they took the phone away.
Yeah.
They didn't want him to call. They're like, he can call.
So he's going, so I can't leave?
Yes.
And they're saying, well, we're getting a search warrant and blah, blah, blah. And they got a search warrant to take pictures of his body.
Right. So he had to strip down.
They made him strip down.
Right. Exactly. And took a lot of pictures. It was just, I felt degraded for him. I mean, that's how I would feel.
Yeah.
Because
there was a room full of police officers, and then just him and
So, okay, am I getting all the details
right. I mean,
here?
That's correct.
Oh man. So then
they let him leave.
Yeah.
After they did that, they wouldn't give him back his clothes, his car, his phone, nothing.
They towed his car, and they kept him there all day, and then finally he left. So it was just really interesting because as you're watching this documentary, you're going to see how much they really believed it was him. They weren't looking at anybody else.
Because the guy kept saying, one of the cops kept saying, well, there's a press conference in 15 minutes. And Nick is like, so? They wanted to show, look, we got our guy.
Right.
And they could not get him to say that he did it.
Now, this is the interesting thing too. Okay, so we have to show you. Ian. Ian was I guess at the time his assistant coach. So he was an assistant soccer coach, and he lived around the area of the school and also where Nick lived. So it was like. And also,
he lived over here and Nick lived over here.
Yes. Yeah. And then in between was
the school.
The school, and then also Tandy and Garrett's apartment was not that far.
Right.
So there was this.
But they were to the left.
They were to the left, But anyway, Nick went to Ian's apartment,
Yeah.
or Nick went to Ian's house to talk about practice because they worked together. So he was there right after, like within minutes of when they said that he was also over at the apartment, you know, doing the crime.
Right.
And so it just didn't add up, but they were trying to make this story
Yep.
fit. That's what it looked like to us. That's what we felt about it. Because
But you can watch it and decide for yourself.
absolutely, and you should. I guess for me, and I'm sure because we've talked about it, it was like for Vera, for you as well, when you see Nick talking so passionately, his body language is like, I can't believe that she would ever even fathom the idea that I would
do this.
ever hurt her child.
And he kept saying, I didn't do this. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. You know, over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the things that many of us have learned from watching body language, it was, you could just see the sincerity, you could feel it. That's how we felt about it, though.
Right.
Anyhow, so the interesting thing too is that, you know, the timing,
Yeah.
it just didn't add up.
Yeah, because Ian was telling the police when he had his interview that Nick was with him
Right.
the time that they thought Garrett was being murdered. He was with him, and the police kept trying to get him to change his tune, and he goes, that's the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And then shortly after Ian, he was with his daughter.
Yeah.
And it was the same
Oh,
situation.
that's that big thing about Nick had said, I went home. Well, that comes later in the trial, though. They kept saying he said, I went straight home, and he never said that.
Right. Because going straight home, he would have turned right, but they had him on the film going left. But I've done that. I've just, you know, well, I'm
Because
going to go
that's
this
where
way.
Ian was.
Right.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh. So anyway.
Yeah. But trying to put words in his mouth, and he would never, he's like, no.
Yeah. And they were like, no, you lied. Because you said you went straight. Oh my gosh. It was just.
And he kept going, I didn't say I went straight home. I said I went home. And they're going, no, you said you went straight home. You know, it was like messing with your mind. And it was like 7-8 hours, right, that he was there?
Yeah.
Or longer.
Being interrogated.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, God, now
Oh
I'm
my God. I
sweating.
know.
It's just the injustice. It's like, oh my God, you're not looking at anyone else?
I know it was because they were saying that they had a footage of the soccer game. It was like the day after or the evening after, and Nick, the coach, was walking to the locker room, and he was out walking all of his young 18-year-old students, and they were saying that no, he's got a limp. He's got a limp.
Yeah, they kept saying, look at his limp. And the video showed him walking, and he was even walking faster than the younger guys.
Right.
And he was not limping.
Right, so our point is they were saying that he hurt himself when he jumped out of Garrett's apartment window. Hi, Roxanne.
Hey, Roxy.
So it was just really the injustice of the situation that just could not.
Because it could be any one of us.
I know.
You know, people putting things on you and then trying to confuse you, and you're upset. You know, it's like, oh my God, that's why people go, if I didn't do it, I would never say I did it. Well, you haven't been in an interrogation room.
Right, I
You know, where sometimes they just go, I'll just say what you want so I can get out of here. Because they keep promising you that.
Exactly, exactly.
Not all cops I'm talking about, but, you know.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Oh yeah, and also Ian was saying he was saying during his interview that he said if he did do it, minutes later he was acting totally normal. It was like right after that they had like practice or
Well,
something.
they kept asking Ian, how did he act? And
yeah.
he goes, well, like he always acts.
It was like, think about it. If we just ended up committing a crime, we're not going to be.
Except if you're a psychopath, you would.
Okay, that's true.
You would, actually.
Yeah.
Because they go home and they act normal.
Right. Okay. So what else, Vera? What else do we want to tell everybody about the setup of this? So he calls somehow he gets a hold of his lawyer friend, who literally, it was Manny, he drove for 7 hours straight up there to help him, because he's like, buddy, this is unlawful what's happening.
Yeah.
You're being, we know where this is going, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
And to cover their butts, they also took photographs of, what's his name? John Jones. Because
That's
he's an
right.
ex. The police
Right.
officer was an ex as well. So they said, well, we'll take pictures of you too. Well, guess what? They did, but he was clothed.
And
He
it-
just had to pull his sleeves up and his pant legs up. That was
And it-
all he had to do.
It was just a couple pictures of
And they did a
this
body
and
search
this.
on, a body cavity search on Nick.
Oh my god.
Can you imagine?
It's, if you look at the comparison.
Yeah,
it's
and
like-
that's why Manny was saying it was just to degrade.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
To say, we
That's-
got you.
right.
thing, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Now, what else? Yeah. Okay. Don't mind.
And Manny was actually saying that the only thing that Nick could have done when he was being strip searched was what he did. Just
yeah.
do what they said.
Right.
Yeah.
And he knew it. You could tell. I mean,
Yeah.
he said, I knew I just had to go along with it.
And the reason why John Jones and Tandy broke up was because he was too domineering. He was too controlling. And that's what she didn't want. She didn't want that.
Right. You're talking about John Jones.
Yes. Who did I say?
No, you just said he.
Oh.
I was just clarifying. Right. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, so they indicted Nick. Right? They indicted him by a grand jury, but it only had the prosecution.
Right.
Right?
I think that's what
Oh,
grand
okay.
juries do. It's only,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah. I don't think,
I have to become more
Defense.
familiar with the grand jury part.
don't quote me, but I believe that.
Oh, I believe you. And
Thank you, Chrissy.
so he's in prison, and they kept stalling the.
We can't let you out because we have to do this. We can't let you out because we have to do that. And then finally the judge goes, no, he's out.
Yeah, the judge was
Finally
the one
said,
that ordered
that was-
him to
yeah.
be released,
Yeah.
and they let him out, and they don't have any DNA.
And well, they have DNA, but
They had DNA underneath Garrett's
Fingernails.
but it wasn't John Jones and it wasn't Nick's.
yeah.
It wasn't anybody that they recognized.
So they kept saying that Garrett had to scratch somebody's face. Well,
Right.
nobody had scratches on their face, you
exactly.
know,
Right.
or anywhere really.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's see. Yeah, they were saying also that because there was actually a deputy DA,
Nicole.
yes, district attorney of this area where they were, and what happened was, it was sort of like this. There was a woman that was running for her office. And
Well, at first she never pressed charges. There was not enough evidence.
right, that's what she
Yeah.
said. She let him go because there was no proof. There was no
Right.
evidence. And so that was, yes, Nicole. And then Mary Rain was running for her position.
For her seat.
And what she used is this case politically to say, I'm going to get the killer, and was
And
completely
she had
focused on
Tandy
Nick.
at her rallies.
Oh, wow.
Candy was right next to her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was relentless
Mm-hmm.
on Nick's daughter, asking her the same question.
Depositions.
Yes.
Well, they had the voting. What is it? The primary, whatever it's called, ballots.
Right.
And Mary Rain won.
Right.
That's why
So
she was able
won.
to. Yeah.
Right.
So she had to have a conviction because she promised at her rallies she would find the killer.
Exactly. So she was relentless on Nick's daughter, asking her the same question over and over and over. And you know, it's like sometimes it's like trying to trip up the girl. And the judge actually dismissed her from this
After it was over.
for badgering the
Yeah,
witness.
she was suspended, Mary Rain.
Okay, so there was a second indictment because they used a new DNA testing, supposedly, right?
Yeah, because there was no DNA found on anybody that they had tested.
And there was like a 1,000% that it could be Nick's in
That's
some
what
way
they
or
said,
something
yeah.
like that. But anyway,
Enter William Fitzpatrick. He's the one that found another DNA place to send the samples to.
right, right. But it still wasn't Nick's.
No, but they put that it could be, so that's why he was indicted again.
Indicted again, exactly. Okay, so what's there's
That guy right
there's
there.
so much in this, yeah.
And he had resources beyond resources. He had like 7 or 8 lawyers so that he can
Exactly.
talk about
the
the
whole
yeah.
team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, okay, right about this time is when Nick gets a new. Isn't this about the time when he gets a new attorney team?
Yeah, because he had the attorney that they gave him.
Right.
And then he started, I think, was it Manny that got these people? I believe.
Yeah. Siegel and Ward, they were attorneys for there was criminal defense and human rights. So this case obviously
We didn't
really
get his name, though.
captured their attention. There was another gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't get his name on there, but he was key to this too.
Yeah. We'll have to put his name in the
Yeah.
description later.
Yeah.
He was. So it was this attorney team, and they were getting worried that they were getting worried about the jury because everyone in this county, it was such a small town in a rural area that everybody knew about the case.
But they did take it to a different county. But still,
yeah.
And they had already had the people that they picked. They already had picked the jury, both sides, and that's when they had that conference with Nick's lawyers.
Right.
You know, and that's when they said, I don't know about this. And then come to find out, Mary Rain, one of the jury members, was a good friend of hers.
Yeah, and they didn't know that at the time, but they were worried about this situation, and so it was a really big risk. But what they did was they pushed for it to be a trial by judge,
bench
instead
trial.
of jury. And boy, was that a good idea because of what you just mentioned. Okay, there's more. Okay,
But it still could depend on the judge, though. So you go, judge.
yeah, exactly. And his name was Felix Cantina, I believe. Cantina. And so during this trial, Nick's team hears that they're flying in somebody from Hawaii.
And you know how they did that.
It's the prosecutor's team is flying in somebody from Hawaii, some witness.
But Nick's team had a private investigator out there walking around searching for things, and he found that.
Yeah. Don Tracy was his name.
Yeah.
And this is fascinating, but so he calls Andrew. Remember the people that we told you about, the young couple that were downstairs changing the tire? It was Shannon Harris and her boyfriend Andrew. Well, he was in Hawaii. He was in the military, I believe. And they were flying him out. So the PI...
Because why?
Because all of a sudden, he is saying that he remembers
Seeing a black man
in the window. And at that, he never said that during like how many countless interviews Shannon said, his girlfriend. He never said that before, and then all of a sudden.
So he calls up Andrew, the private investigator.
Yeah.
And Andrew assumed he was with the DA. And he goes, and I didn't say I wasn't because I didn't feel I needed to. And he was answering all my questions. So he knew that Andrew was going to say, I saw a black man in the window.
In the window.
Yeah.
Right.
So then he found out then from Andrew that about Shannon. So then he calls Shannon.
Yeah. And then he calls Shannon, and Shannon was like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
We didn't see anything. Why is he saying this? But the amazing thing, and okay, Shannon is amazing.
She's a hero.
She is. She
stood her ground.
She is. And she called Andrew, her ex-boyfriend. And she was like, why are you doing this? She audio recorded it. And she's like, why are you doing this? You know we didn't see anything.
And he goes, you just don't remember. And she goes, come on. And then he was saying, well, I saw somebody up there, but it was so black. And she goes, come on now.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, and she goes, come on. And he's going, no, really.
So then what happens is they find out that the prosecuting team knew about Shannon's testimony, but only asked for Andrew. So it made it look really bad.
Well, it was bad.
Actually. Yeah. So when they
didn't let them know that Andrew was coming.
Right.
The prosecuting team didn't let the defense know.
So you could
can't do
see
that.
it. Like the judge did not think that was a good thing, and it really worked out for Nick's defense team, because even though they put Andrew on the stand, they didn't ask him for the description. You'll see when you watch the documentary, but
And it's it's amazing.
okay. So anyway, what am I missing, Vera?
Nothing. That's
okay.
it. Now we're in the trial.
All right. So now we're going to reconvene the next day, and we're going to find out. There's Nick. We're going to find out,
What's he deciding?
Yeah, did he find him guilty or not guilty?
Right.
So let's see what happened.
Da,
Da, da, da.
Yeah. Now, but still.
Oh my God!
The
I
mother,
know.
it's still sad, but I mean, happy for him that he wasn't railroaded. That's my point.
Yeah, that exactly.
But it was still horrible for the mother.
No, because you could. I mean, obviously for the mother and the family, it was just devastating.
Because they knew it was Nick, and that's a lot because of what John Jones was telling them.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's it's never easy when it's a murder of anyone, because you want to find out. I mean, Nick wanted to find out who killed him too.
And there was a young man that came forward, but he was in Attica prison at the time, and he came forward and was saying that he saw John Jones going into his house and Garrett going by. So they were kind of like in the same vicinity, and then John Jones took his dog for a walk in the same area. Went the same way that Garrett was going. That was the last time they ever saw Garrett alive. With his little, I forgot what those things are called. It wasn't
It's
a
not
bike.
scooter thing, but it's like a skateboard
Something
type
like
of
that,
thing.
yeah. So there, he was trying to say, look, the lawyers were saying, if you think that just because Nick was in the parking lot when Garrett was going home, that there's something sinister about that, then what about this?
Right.
And why is it just a coincidence that Garrett went by when John Jones was outside?
Right. Right.
And John Jones kept saying, no, I didn't see Garrett. They just went right by each other.
Right.
But maybe he didn't. I mean, they didn't wave at each other any acknowledgement. So maybe he didn't. But it's still, why is one suspicious and one is just a coincidence?
And that's the thing. It's like, it's
it is blatant.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we wanted to know. Was there a past life connection?
Yeah.
This story is so intense. It's like, you wonder about the dynamics of it.
Yeah. And they still don't. It's a cold case. They still don't know who did it.
Yeah.
So that's like horrible for the mother.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I hope that.
But you don't want the wrong person in prison.
No, and exactly, and that's my thing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm happy for him that he gets to have that Nick gets to have his life with his children.
Yeah.
But
his life is over.
But then because his name is forever connected.
Because there's people saying even the DA said no, he's guilty.
Right. So that is always going to be there, and it's like, and of course,
Can't coach.
Of course we hope that, because with the new DNA type of test and everything, that might still
find the person.
Yeah, we might be able to discover who that is.
Exactly.
Look at these cases that get resolved after decades.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully that person will be brought to justice and the family can finally have closure. But so we were wondering, I mean, obviously
there was no robbery. Nothing was taken from the. Because I think somebody was in there already that had a key. There was nothing broken in, and didn't realize somebody was in there, or Garrett had come home and found somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he was in his mother's room. Garrett. That's where they found him.
And the feeling of it was that.
Because I think somebody was in the mother's room trying to find out things.
Right.
If she was still seeing Nick.
And it was also, it felt like more of a personal thing that happened as opposed to totally objective, just there to get some cash or money or whatever. Obviously, there was nothing taken, so that's another element of it. Yeah. Okay, so Vera, I mean, obviously, Nick's one of his really good friends, Manny, being that he charted to have a friend who was a lawyer, and his wife was a lawyer. So I mean, he had so much, great chart, right? So much backup in regarding, the legal sense.
But he still had to go through hell.
Oh, heck yeah. And still go on from this point with his life. So it's an amazing example of charting the right people to be around us to help us with a situation.
Exactly.
So what do you feel? I mean, did you pick up on?
Yeah, I got one that's really significant to, well, it was the one right before this lifetime. So there was a lot of cell memory that was still significant, especially for one person. So what I picked up was that they had a past life, and it was kind of like the Revolutionary War kind of situation. And John Jones and Tandy were married. And John Jones was for the Redcoats. Is that the the British?
Right.
Yeah, and Nick was a spy for us. Yeah. So he got to know John Jones, and they got to be friends, and because he wanted to find out things for the military for our side, and he and Tandy started having a little fling, So that's whenever Nick, let's see, because he was in the military, but there was they had a duel or something. I don't know if it was. Do they have duels back then?
Oh, I'm sure. I would imagine.
Yeah, because whatever it was like they met somewhere to decide what was going to happen, and not Nick. What's the other guy's name? John Jones, in that past life, shot first before they counted to 10.
Oh no!
And he missed. So then Nick had a shot.
Oh.
But he didn't want to kill him, so he just shot away, but it still hit him. It still hit.
Oh my gosh!
It still hit John Jones.
Wow.
So
that wasn't meant to happen or anything.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was it. It's just that, that feeling whenever he met Tandy, and that's why he was so possessive. Which he was anyway, but he was even more so with her. It was he had to keep her close because he didn't want anybody else to have her, basically.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, because they even got in a shoving match. Remember?
Oh, in this life, he pushed Tandy, right?
Yeah, that kind of thing. So so that was it, and it was just, and there's still cell memory with Tandy with Nick, because after the whole situation was over, and they had witnesses and stuff, so nothing happened to Nick.
Oh my gosh!
But he didn't stick around for Tandy because he had his own agenda. He wasn't in love with her.
Right.
She was in love with him.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's that dynamic of, you left me, so this time she left him.
Right.
But still there's that animosity that you didn't stay with me.
Right.
From the past life.
So that's
cell memory.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
No wonder.
Because it's deep.
And, and sometimes when we're looking at it, we don't know, well, why did she why did she trust John Jones so much?
Yeah.
But there's that cell memory of their connection of he not betrayed me, but in a soul sense, subconsciously betrayed me.
Because she was a beauty in that past life.
Right.
I mean, she was gorgeous.
So in this past life, that's what she's remembering. And so in this life, it's bleeds over.
Yeah.
And then she's like, okay, I trust him, not you, kind of a situation.
Exactly.
Wow, that's fascinating. Because like you said, in this life, he was the one. Well, she left him, like you said, and Nick was like, why? I'm confused.
But for him, it was okay, well, but yeah, he was confused, and he didn't want to not be with her, but he was like, okay.
Yeah, he wasn't
Calm-
angry. He was
yeah.
all, we can be friends, and it's
Yeah.
all good. I wish,
I wish
was
you liked me.
confused, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
And then for him in that past life, he was like, well, I'm not really in love with her,
Right.
so I'm off to my spy stuff. Because that was
Right.
more important to him.
Right. It was the bigger mission, bigger purpose. Wow.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm telling you, cell memory runs deep.
This is and this is why we wanted to talk about this case, is because we wanted to show the amazing example of how cell memory can not only affect us in this life, but can play a part of what we chart, what we
Yeah.
choose to experience. It's fascinating how it all played out, because any different step, it could have went a much different
And
way.
so interesting too, because Nick in current life was not honest with his baby mama and was having an affair with Tandy. And in the past life, he couldn't be honest with them because he had a mission.
Right.
So-
Wow. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh, the web how do they say it? Web we weave.
Yeah.
When at first we choose to deceive. I didn't say it right, but it's something like that.
Yeah, it's just fascinating, and that's it's just the spiritual aspect of life will never cease to amaze us, right?
And that's why Tandy didn't believe that Nick didn't do it, because he lied to her before
and it's in
in
there.
the past life.
It's just exactly,
And
it's
sometimes
just-
you don't know why. It's just
and some people might, it's just they're just convinced because that's what they see because of some memory of different situations and experiences, and it's just so
Nick
fascinating.
ended up he doesn't have a job because he
Right.
can't move them away from the area because the kids are ingrained in the schools and all that, and the baby mama has a good job, so she pays him to take care of the kids, and he's a part-time soccer coach for little
Right,
kids.
yeah.
And that's voluntary.
Volunteering,
He's not making
yeah.
money from it.
Yeah.
So he's still having to kind of pay.
Right. And, so for us, it just feels like, he's a good person.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that, his life, he still has his life. He's not in jail.
And look at that guy. What's that guy's name? That was Edward. Was it Edward? Shannon's boyfriend? Andrew. How easy it was for him to lie. He
know.
would do whatever the cops wanted him to do. He was happy to change his
Right.
his
Story.
yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. We learn from so many different examples in one story, right? Experiences. But yeah, so, and obviously.
And that's what happens when you aren't truthful.
Yeah. But our prayers and hopes too, of course,
Yes.
to mother
And then the children.
and the family.
Can you imagine how they were being
I
treated?
know that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And Garrett's family.
Yes,
his
of course.
uncle, his mom, his
horrible.
grandparents.
I mean, there was no win-win in that situation.
No, there isn't. There isn't.
So
So
hopefully they'll find out who did it.
yeah. Well, we want to join you. We want to thank you for
We want to
joining
join
us.
you, all right.
Yeah. Let's see. Was there anything, Vera, that we
What did
wanted
Roxanne
to?
say?
Let's see. She says, "Whoa."
No, he didn't learn his lesson yet. No cheating.
Yeah. Yeah, Johnny D.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's really fascinating. We recommend that you see the documentary and see. I mean, it's hard to watch.
It is. It is because you're feeling for so many different
People.
We were feeling for so many different people.
And then I was thinking, God, if it was me, if it was my family, I would want the real killer in there. But
Yes.
would I? We don't know what we're going to
Right.
do unless
the
we're in that situation.
And Roxanne, we didn't feel that the mother was hiding something.
She went along with what John Jones was telling her.
Right. She truly. It seemed
'Cause
to
he's a
us
police
that she
officer.
trusted him. That they had.
But if you notice, you'll notice that he was not around her during the trial. They were not around
That's
each other.
true. So years later, because it took a while. It took maybe 5 or 6 years later is when it all came
Because the night she found out that her son was dead, John Jones spent the night.
Right, and he had a girlfriend at the time, but he told his girlfriend, "I'm going to go be with Tandy to help her through
Because
this
that's who he
difficult time."
really wanted to be with.
Right, and so he didn't leave her side. So that was interesting unto itself. But yeah, so it didn't seem to us like she was hiding anything. That she was definitely innocent.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
she didn't.
And that's up to the individuals if they want to come back and redo it again.
Right.
You know, because that's what Nick wanted to do. It was mostly him wanting to come back and do it
Wow.
over, and then.
Gosh, I can just picture when you watch the show.
And
It's
that's
like,
why we come back again sometimes, but sometimes we don't. We stay on the other side and help other people that are going through the same situation we did and help that way.
I can just picture John in the red suit of the Revolutionary
coats,
War,
yeah.
and you just picture it.
I can see him walking around too.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
He was very, very cocky back then
Yeah. Yeah, right. So it's up to us. Like
Yeah.
you said, if we choose to. I can't imagine. I think this is learned for them.
At least we can learn
for
from it
him.
too, yeah.
So thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us. And we're going to be together this upcoming weekend. And then there's going to be a weekend in August
Where
that
we're not going to have anything going
Yes.
on.
Yes. So next weekend I'll be here, and then the following weekend it might be a show from afar.
There you go.
We love you all. Thank you so much. Vera, any last words?
Don't cheat. No, journey with us. Journey with us.